Introduce Rick Fatta. Rick is the deputy of the commander of the U.S. First manager for the Army civilian. Rick graduated from the U.S. Military Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Engineering and later earned a Bachelor of Science in Engineering Physics from the Air Force Institute of Technology and a Master's of Science in Systems Management from the Florida Institute of Technology. He attended the U.S. Army War College and the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. Rick's done quite a bit in this community of note. I'd like to point out that if you are working in the Army Directed Energy Program, you probably should come up and Rick on the back afterward. It really was through Rick's efforts managing the technology development of that, the maturation of that led us to where we are today. We're actually building prototypes from your perspective of 50 kilowatt systems and a 300 kilowatt class system. Rick was the guy that led all that effort, and as you might imagine, the challenge he had trying to convince folks that that was indeed a viable capability. And right now we know everything going on in the world. Capability the Army's very interested in, so we thank Rick for that. And in short, we're just really fortunate to have Rick as a senior civilian at SMDC. So please help me welcome Rick Fatta to the stand.
I'd love to talk about PPE for the next 2 hours. I'll try to some perspective. Yeah, the Army. I'm old. The Army assigned me here first time in 1979. I went to junior high back in about 1969. So all of you that are, I wasn't born by then. A lot of you here. Don't worry about it. From my perspective, there wasn't much here back in 1979. My first staff duty officer was in the only building on out on the road, and it's walking around looking at typewriters. If there wasn't still lay with the house, wander around the building. That's been a long time. You know, we've built new roads. Got in and off the arsenal. We have things that we can do here. Way back in 1979. Most people assigned to Redstone kind of said, where do I have to? Now, as you know, in the military, in a lot of cases, folks are trying to look hard. What hasn't changed from my perspective is the community involvement. It's never been better, and it's grown an awful lot. A lot of things that we have here, things that we value are because of the community involvement of the entire Redstone, Huntsville, Madison. So in the competition for the small feature, short feature, I'd like to run our
Through the marvels of scientific advance, my voice is coming to you from a satellite, circling in outer space.
Yeah, so short and sweet. But that's part of our legacy. As we see before the theme here, the Redstone. I'll highlight some of that. But first, I want to brag a little bit. You know, there are several measures of how Army DoD organizations are measured. One of those is through our federal employee viewpoint survey and partnership with public. And we were, for the second year in a row, rated as the #1 place to work in the Army this year, not even tied with anybody in the Army and the DoD across all the services. Yes, it's a great place to work. For those of you who understand that we are also competing for people and personnel and opportunities and scientists. We're not just contributing to your company. We're proud of that's an actual banner here, and also at the other half of our command out in Colorado Springs. Next chart. So, yeah, this is a familiar chart. What I wanted to do, though, was point out some of the things that have changed over the past year in terms of physical changes and also some perspective and some approaches to what we're going to do next. The four circles on the top are the four stars that Carver reports to now. Of course, Strategic Command, STRATCOM, the Army started out, it's our space out in Colorado Springs. That's gone away, and over the past year or so, we've moved that proponency over to Space Command. All space and missile defense has moved over to Space Command. That's the second. Of course, the Chief of Staff of the Army, and then of course the GMD. This year, we became the Army Service Component element that provides forces to the combatant commander. For NORTHCOM, everybody knows that it's already in our north. For the very narrow area of GMD, ground-based missile defense, the early defense of ICBM in the state. And so that narrow piece of it, we became the ASCC. So now Space Command, North Command, NORTHCOM, and then also a piece of it on STRATCOM. STRATCOM requires an Army Service Component Command for things like hypersonics and hypersonic development. Future of that will be SMDC. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about the senior commander roles here on the left. We also have another 3-star command that will have a joint functional component command for integrated missile defense. And that element moved to Space Command also this year from STRAT. So again, all the elements, integration across missile defense enterprise have now been aligned under Space Command. Across the bottom there, we have the 4 major supported elements. The Army's only Space Brigade. Talk a little bit about how that is changing in terms of what Army space capabilities are. Army's only Missile Defense Brigade, GMD Brigade, that's the second one. We have one of the Army's 12 centers of excellence that stood up. And then we have one of the Army's 5 laboratories, the TET. And then we have Dr. Krappel is the new Tech Center Director, so if you have any hard questions about technology, don't bring your card to me. Please go see Keith and talk to him about that. We'll talk a little bit about them on session chart. Of the things that we do, our priorities, I just want to talk a little bit about the report there, prepare for future conflict. I would say from our perspective, we are also heavily involved in current conflict in all sorts of different ways. We direct support of UCOM, USERPAC, other things that are going on around the world that we can't necessarily talk about. We are aligned with the Army of 2030 to 2040, depending on which chief you talk to. The current chief has got us driving towards an army, building an army of 2040. But there's an interim step in there, like we had before, around 2030, which is kind of taking current capabilities that are out there right now and putting those out there. But if you recognize, given resources and other things that are going on, it's a continuum. We are heavily in the process of building science and technology requirements, delivering the Army of about the 2040. A couple things that we're working directly that you will have heard about. Current chief has given us a green light to continue to work on space branch, a new branch of the Army. It's that our armed officers and warrant officers that are dedicated to space will continue on from a functional area of capability. That's important. What's most important to us are the enlisted soldiers that kind of work in space, coming from their original branches, and then they go back to their original branches. And you don't really get to keep them. So one of the things that we're pushing hard now is a proposal, actually a mock proposal that allows us to move all those Army soldiers into a branch. We're not there yet, but we do have a green light, and the Army across the board understands the importance of space and space capability and space. You've heard of missile defense for as long as we've had Rick here. We are now working on an approach of missile defeat, which integrates capability before and after launch. It integrates different effects. How are you in a limited resource fight that you've witnessed around the world in different areas right now? How do you make sure that you can defeat the missile threat? So missile defeat. And then trans-regional missile defense, instead of global missile defense, walk through that paradigm. Trans-regional, any missile defense capability or missile capability is going to go trans-regional. So you'll hear those kinds of activities on it. Next chart. So with this is around the world, this is what we do. I just want to highlight a couple of things here that are on this chart. Here in Huntsville, half of the command is here, the other half is out of Colorado Springs. The headquarters for the Space and Missile Defense Center of Excellence is here. A big piece of it is out of Colorado Springs. The technical center is entirely located here. The Ronald Reagan Missile Defense, the RTS Center, it's here under the technical center also. Now, Guadalupe is a long way from there. You may not realize it, but the command and control of those small radar, 1 million pounds, 100 feet tall, is here in Redstone, right off coast here. So we command those things from here. An opportunity for us to excel in some areas right here in town. And I'll highlight some of this. I want to talk about our astronaut attachment. 3 sources of liquid for the this perspective, right? They probably don't see themselves exactly that way. And an example out there in sitcom, the grayed out pieces on here are the Joint Tactical Ground Station, which is a missile warning capability that we are in the process of transitioning to Space Force to integrate into the rest of the missile warning enterprise. Right now, we have done it. 1st of October, we transitioned capability and responsibility, but the Army is providing support for Space Force right now to get full up on board the resources, the training, the capabilities. But there is a guardian that's the commander. About 2,600 folks, not a huge command, but a huge footprint. Chart. A little bit about First Space Brigade. I was out yesterday in Colorado Springs for General Dickinson's retirement ceremony. I'm not sure if it was his retirement, but it was a retirement ceremony. And just that from a perspective, the soldiers on the ground, and that's all we had, was the First Space Brigade. First Space Brigade characterized as the element of Space Command that is a maneuver and fire element. So they asked it. That's a unique element. We provide that capability not just to the Army, but as our contribution to the Army space. That's very important from the capabilities. Again, the only Army Space Brigade. What's changing is as the Army realizes what they need, we're moving space capabilities into other formations. Multi-domain task force, future formations that you'll hear about here. There's multiple ways to move Army space capabilities out of a single element into the active Army, so that the different theaters have direct capabilities. They understand why they need it. We will maintain our mothership approach to maintaining Army space and doing all the training. These folks are forward stationed. They're on continuous alert, performing activities around the world, 15 different locations, 10 countries across 5 different time. 3 elements that I talked about: missile warning. We still will maintain the NTPY-2 radars around the world that do missile events. Space control. From our perspective, Army space capabilities for the Army starts in the ground and ends on the ground. You can fill in the blanks everywhere in between. But providing, make sure that we have assured capability and they don't, is the mission of Army space. Then space support. First Space Brigade used to be the 911 force. If you're going somewhere, you call the First Space through all the channels. And they sent you a capability package of personnel. What we're doing now in the Army is taking some of that capability and moving it out to the multi-domain task forces and other formations so that there's dedicated support in addition to what we have for First Space Brigade. From the Army perspective, for these guys, Army space starts with the ground. Next slide. 100th Missile Defense Brigade, the nation's only defense against ICBM threats. I think, like First Space Brigade, it's multi-conflict. We have the National Guard and Reserve elements associated with that. We have Department of the Army civilians. We have numerous contractors. Locations you see here, again, with expansion of the missile containment, expanding the missile field up there to meet our requirements. Very important capability, again, on 24/7. National Guard soldiers and Fort Greely, Alaska, come after duty every day with these signs. Sure. Our Space and Missile Defense Center of Excellence, yeah, I've shown this chart for 3 years now. Some things haven't changed. And been a great success in terms of Army space, high altitude missile defense capability development. Just like the Maneuver Center, just like the Aviation Center, do all things of Army space. Develop capabilities, it's the generating force element, it's like I call it. I'll highlight across the board. We develop capabilities, we build requirements. Requirements are important to meet with all of our partners here, develop space requirements and missile defense requirements, and pass that back to the Army Technical Center so that S&T, R&D, and those kind of things are built. I kind of joke with our brigade commanders, you know, you take over command, you got 2 years. That means if you have a great idea, you need to let us know on the day you change command. Maybe 2 commanders later, we'll be able to provide you that capability. That's the way things work. It all starts with requirements, and then we do the training piece. We have a schoolhouse out in Colorado Springs, and then we do personnel development, personnel components for every report. I'd point out here that the grade out note is that we're very tightly integrated with PFT/space CFT, who also helps build our requirements and understand what has to go out. We essentially have the ability to do air and missile defense and space from mud to space. You know, we have the Army integration role for missile defense. So starting at the short range, you know, Stinger into what we do. You know, the program that's been around for a long time. The Patriot, THAAD, development, defense of Guam. We're heavily involved in all that through GMD and all the way into space and how that all integrates. So we have the ability to see all those from the requirements perspective. Partnership with any other elements. Yes, sir. Technical Center, I said, if you have any hard questions, Dr. Crapples is here in the middle of the room here. He came on board this summer, and I can tell you, this is not your father's technical center. A lot of things have changed over the past few years. We've done a lot of transition of technology that's developed at Space and Missile Defense Center, Technical Center. And as those things transition, we are now developing the core competency back. Process. Kind of joke about it. It's like here from SDA, we don't develop satellites. We develop requirements, fly experiments to perform Army requirements. Then we pass those requirements on to the Space Forces, Space Development Agency to integrate into our. One of our responsibilities is to make sure that Army requirements are met. It's whatever the Armed Forces developing. I talked a little bit about the strategic missile or missile defense, moving into missile defeat, transregional missile defense. Those are the technologies associated with that, advanced technologies, things that we're looking at, things we've done in the past and now we're getting developed again. Of course, DE, there is still a lot of directed energy base for the and hypersonics. He puts up there, we're back. You know, we did transition the majority of the program after the only success like that. I'm here. No, okay. But we're, when I say we're back, there is an S&T-based requirement to move forward in hypersonics. Partnered with the RICTOs, I guess it must be more than one. I think that's the only typo here. But yeah, so. And then, of course, the rating test, I have a separate chart to talk a little bit about. And then, as we move forward on what are those technologies we want to to enable all those requirements. One of the things that we put together every year is a technology requirement paper that we build from requirements. It's classified and can't give it to anybody except all the Army that. We're in the process of pulling together a version of that to provide to industry, so everyone has that same knowledge of the kind of things. Next chart. So rig and test, a little bitty picture of the big old radar to help do these, don't do justice to what really goes on. Small pictures, but really big sensors, really deep space capability in a very challenging environment. It's an area where we are partnering with all the rest of the department. 24/7 space operations, in addition to the other missions that we do out there, developmental testing in support of the Army, the Air Force, and the Missile Defense Agency. The operational test, an ICBM is tested from Vandenberg Air Force Base. It lands in Kwajalein, Missouri. And the Air Force or Space Force wants to know exactly where those things landed. What happened here at the place where that goes. It's the only place you can do a land impact. And then, of course, space surveillance and direct support of Space Command, the Space Force, and the Joint Warfare. It's a mission. We are now becoming an integrated part of the space operations of the Joint Force. Tasked by Spacecom to more all those missions. But again, a challenging environment. We're working hard to make sure that all those sensors and optics and other things are continuing to work. And then I point out the other little tiny picture up on the right, command and control, rocket here, Huntsville, Texas. It operates with radars here. Next chart. And here's our 3 sources of water. The Army has the Army, not well known that the Army astronauts are assigned to SMDC. Of course, Frank Rubio just got back and set a new record for Army astronauts here in 71 days. Dan McLean is also now the commander of NASA Attacker. And Drew Morgan has come back to the Army. Essentially, he's an astronaut. But he is now the commander of Kwajalein, Missouri, which is a Space Force or space officer requirement now. As we always say, he was much closer to continental landmass on the space station. He ended up so he's again been working very closely with us. We're very proud of our contributions. Senior Mission Commander has not changed. The role of SMDC as the senior commander has the big mission requirements on both Fort Bailey, great professionals. Also, pilot here in Oregon, Harrison. I highlighted Rock 8 because we used to have 2 to 3 times a week folks out on Kwajalein. Being able to bring the command center here and used to cost one island and things like that. We got about 1,200 or so folks that got there. Again, a big chunk of our mission support. Next chart. So, given where we are, kind of both directors from the technical center, COE, and the rest of the staff, they come up and say, give us who your hardline partner with in different areas. And, you just can't say it because we're online. I just want to point out that here on Redstone, we are a very integrated partnership. Okay. I already highlighted the AT&T Space CFT that we have in working through our requirements. On the contracting command, E3I is on schedule. Maybe you know what that means. So don't have to ask me that question. So you're on track. Very quick. Of course, the developmental arm for GMD is the Missile Defense Agency. RIPCO, we transitioned through there. PEOs that are here in place. You may not know the PEO IWS has an element here on Western Arsenal. The FBI. So I challenged that. What are we doing with the FBI? Turns out there's some cyber stuff that neither one of us can talk about, but we're a partner. Our Chief Technical Officer, Steve Pierce, pulled together a Chief Technical Officer interface 4 times a year. And we get great sponsorship of all the organizations that are available. And that's a sort of technical interchange that brings together all the folks in here. And of course, we use facilities. SDA is co-located with us. A lot of things that are frankly, I was a bit surprising we have this extensive list. These are things we do on a regular basis. Again, small command, huge footprint around the world, doing a lot of things. That's all I have this morning.